Hey guys, welcome to episode 134 of the Juicebox Podcast. This episode is going to be called Low, Low, Low Your Boat. Other titles that were under consideration: Abandoned in Ohio. Let's see. This one: Captains of the Struggle Bus. 2 years, a health issue. Engaged in college. Tonsillitis 9 times. This one had a lot of possibilities, but in the end, I went with Low, Low, Low Your Boat. This episode is with Audra. Audra was diagnosed while she was in college. She has a crazy story and an interesting story too. She got married while she was in college to Brian. It's just really interesting. And the real meat of the episode is we talk about low blood sugars and how we take care of them. That's pretty much it. Anyway, this episode of the Juicebox Podcast is brought to you today by Dexcom. Please go to dexcom.com/juicebox to find out more. It's also brought to you by Omnipod. You can go to myomnipod.com/juicebox. And we're going to have a message for Animas users later in the show. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before being bold with insulin.
My name's Audra. I'm 24. And I was diagnosed with T1 when I was 20, so this is my 4th year.
Yeah, so 4 years puts you 2013-ish?
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. May of 2013.
And so that's pretty much right in the middle of, technology that's starting to kind of kick butt a little bit. So
yeah.
Did you start with did you get a Dexcom early on? Do you have one?
No, I didn't. I actually just got my Dexcom, probably 6 or 7 months ago.
Okay.
So the first, 8 months of my diagnosis, I was just on MDIs, just doing the shots. And then I found an endo, kind of like a random endo that I saw literally one time that just wanted to help me get a pump. And I traveled 4 hours away just to see this endo to write me a script for a pump. And so I got on a pump that way, kind of unconventional.
Is that how they do it in Alabama?
I guess so.
You have to drive 4
Actually,
hours.
I was in Ohio at the time.
Ohio, my gosh.
So I guess, yeah, I grew up in Ohio and I went to college in Ohio. And now I moved to Alabama 2 years ago.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Let me say this before we get going too fast. Every time you talk, I get... there's interference. So your voice is crystal clear, but there's interference laying over top of it. So are you using any kind of an audio device for is your microphone going into an audio device, or are you just going through your computer? I'm
just going through my phone.
Oh, you're on your you are on a cell phone?
Yes. Gotcha. Should I do it on my computer?
No, you shouldn't do anything. There's no rules, Audra. Your voice is so crystal clear, but every time you talk, there's this that kind of comes behind you. And so I was hoping to get, I was going to say maybe you could get away from, sometimes people talk next to their cell phones on their computer, and the cell phone makes this weird, but it doesn't do that when you're using the cell phone. So
that's weird. I have the fan on in the room. Should I cut that off?
Oh, try that.
Is that what it is?
Maybe when you start talking, your mic starts picking up sound, and I'm hearing the fan.
It's so funny how it all works. Okay, let's see if that helps.
It's still there. I don't want you to die from the heat. And so, can you imagine if we're talking and I'm just like, Audra, hello? And then
and I'm
you get a little
here.
weird, then all of a sudden you hear this in the background. I'm like, oh my God. She shut the fan off and now look what's happened.
Oh, God.
No, I think it's going to be fine like this. I'll see if I can.
Are you sure?
No, listen, sure. I'm not sure of anything. I've been alive for 45 years, and last night my children asked me a question about school, and I was like, please don't ask me these questions.
Oh my gosh, that's what I'm most nervous about whenever I have kids.
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone. I cheated my way through the entirety of my schooling career, which isn't even true. I didn't even try hard enough. Like, cheating would have been too much effort. I'd have been like, cheating, no, that sounds like a lot of effort. I'm not doing that. So, okay. So you're diagnosed. I'm sorry, we're pretty far off the beaten path at this point. But,
no, you're fine.
But so you're diagnosed when you're 20, while you're at college, I'm assuming.
Yes. Well, actually, I had just had finals week, and I was in Ohio. My family was in Alabama, so my mom came up to like pick me up and bring me down to Alabama for. I think I was only going to be there for like a week because I was going to take summer classes. Mm-hmm. So I was just going to come home for a week and just have like a fun, relaxing week at home with my family.
How'd that go?
And yeah, that did not happen as planned. But I'm glad I was with my mom when that happened. But yeah, so she drove me down to Alabama. We went shopping one day, and I remember this part really vividly because I felt like I didn't feel too bad. Like, I don't know. I guess it was just because that was my normal then, so I didn't realize that I felt sick until I started on insulin later and realized, this is what normal feels like.
How long do you think that process was happening where you were?
Oh gosh, 2 years. I know exactly when it all started happening because my second week of college, I got really sick, just like with a virus.
Wow.
And ever since then, I had like the weirdest health stuff happening. Like it'd be one thing after another every few months, and it would be like a different part of my body, just like going wacko. Like,
no kidding.
It was super weird. Like I had like just random eye infections, and they would be like, it's not pink eye, it's not this, it's not that. We don't know what it is. It's just annoying. So take these drops.
And then that
they
goes
thought
away.
I had celiac. Yeah.
Right.
I got tonsillitis like 9 times in 3 months. So they took out my tonsils.
That's got to be a world record.
Other stuff started happening. It was just so weird. Like, and when you like over the course of the 2 years, when I would be just like dealing with one thing after another, it was kind of just like, what's going on? Like, I guess I just have bad luck. It didn't, like, none of it seemed connected, so.
And had you had any kind of, like, health stuff like that as a younger person?
No. I mean, I would get, like, sinus infections every now and then, but, like, I really was healthy my whole childhood.
Did your parents
so that's why it was weird.
Did your parents have, like, theories? Like, was it, she's away at school, there's stress, or did you feel a lot of stress while you were away at school?
I did, but, you know, I was a music major. I was trying to graduate early. I got engaged, so I was planning a wedding, and I was just like, you know, I thought it was just like, maybe I'm not sleeping enough, and so my body's just acting weird.
You got
and
engaged.
All right,
listen, we're never going to talk about diabetes if you keep saying stuff like this. So you got engaged while you were at college?
I did. I'm still married to him, and I still like him.
You still like him? Well, listen,
I do.
Let's not get crazy. It's only been 4 years, but
True.
But wow, how does that happen? Like I'm fascinated by that. Like, because I got married early too, but I wasn't in college when I did it, and so like it was
kind of crazy.
Yeah. Did he do something really special, or were you?
Part of it was like how well he treated me while I was sick, because we started dating like January of 2011, and my body just started going crazy August of 2011.
Okay.
And so like through that whole process, like he just took really good care of me. And I don't know, I feel like that kind of expedited things in our relationship a little bit, because it showed me and my family that, like, he's husband material.
Is there any chance this is a Munchausen's by proxy situation? Was he making you sick, do you think, to take care of you? Is there any chance of that? Was he like, this girl's...
I really hope not. Yeah. And I doubt that.
he'd be like, I didn't think I was going to find a girl this hot. I'm just going to keep her sick so she needs me.
I'll be
the guy that brings, like, M&Ms and things like that, and then... Because that was my vibe. Like, I would just bring cookies. And then,
That's so funny.
Kelly would be like, I don't like you. I'd be like, there's cookies. And she's like, you're not that bad.
But look, I have things. Yeah.
There's chocolate in the cookies.
He's 2 years older than me, too, so that helps. He was, like, getting ready to graduate college when I was, like, in the middle of college. So it just kind of, if we were the same age, it probably wouldn't have happened till later. But I guess when you know, you know.
I guess so.
I never thought I would get married young, that's for sure. I like, growing up was even like, maybe I'll never get married and I'll just kind of,
Yeah, no, sure. Well,
do my own thing.
And plus, after the tonsillitis 9 times, you got to figure no one's looking for you, probably. Like that.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. I get tonsillitis every 6 weeks.
Right, all the time.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. So that's congratulations. That's amazing. And,
thanks.
And did he bring you to Alabama, or did something that worked out for you?
My family was moved down here right before I left for college. Mm-hmm. I went to school in Ohio to stay in state, and then they all left me.
Oh my God! So you're like, your mom and dad and any siblings you may have, they moved away from you while you were at college?
Yeah.
Wow.
They went from being like 2 hours away to being 10 hours away.
Did you take that personally by any chance?
No,
Was it a job
not
thing?
their fault. Yeah, it was my dad's job.
All right, nice.
If it wasn't a job thing, I probably would have taken it personally.
You were just like,
okay,
Audra,
thanks, guys.
We've always wanted to live in the South, Audra. Goodbye.
Right. Brian grew up in Georgia, so he always was kind of like chomping at the bit to move down south, just somewhere down south. Okay. And then my family's super close, and I wanted to live closer to them. And every time I came down and visited them, I just like loved the area. Yeah. And so one really bad winter in Ohio, we're like, we have got to move.
Getting out of
So we did.
I say to my wife sometimes, I'm like, why do we live here? There are warm places in the country. There's houses there. Other people live there fine. And now I'm looking outside. Funny. I believe I have permafrost in my backyard at this point. And it's, there were these beautiful little flowers coming up for spring. And now they're dead under the snow.
Oh, man.
Yeah. What am I going to do? Replant them? I don't have time for that, Audra.
I know. All my Ohio friends are like, oh, it's so cold. I'm like, you can move, right? Like, nobody's like chaining you.
Right. It's not like you just got off the Mayflower and it would take like 6 months for you to get where you're going. You could just make the decision and be there in like 6 hours. So
exactly.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Okay. So you are diagnosed when you're 20. You're in college. This lovely man, Brian, is he's very helpful at the lead up to the diagnosis and then into the diagnosis as well. He's still there. Everything's good. You left with an insulin pump, did you say, from the hospital, or not even injection?
Not from the hospital. Okay. I got the insulin pump about 8 months later from
when you went
through
the whole doctor's thing. I'm sorry. We started talking about
you're fine.
Your college wedding, and I was just like, oh my God, which, by the way, might be the title of this episode, College Wedding, but I'm not sure.
Oh, gosh.
And so...
Man, it was a lot of fun, I'll tell you that.
I would imagine, right? Because you invited like a bunch of like early 20s like college students to your right?
Oh, yes.
Probably more like a kegger
I was
than
in a college a cappella group, and my a cappella group performed at the reception, and there was like all of a sudden like all the guys disappeared, and we're like, where's all the men? Where'd they go? And I go out on the patio, and they're all, like, literally all of them left the reception to go smoke cigars, and we're all just, like, hanging out. It was so much fun.
Yeah, now the episode's going to be called Acapella Audra, so you ruined the other title. But, oh, wow. Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm never going to get past that. Let's talk about Omnipod for a second, shall we? Okay. So you want an insulin pump, but you don't want all the tubing. You don't want all the hassle that comes with that tubing. Obviously, you want an Omnipod. But how can you be sure? Well, you go to my&nbsp.com/juicebox. And Omnipod would be happy to send you out a demo pod that you can try on for yourself. Check it out, see what you think. Then if you want to keep moving forward, just tell them, hey, I like this. Let's make this happen. It's pretty much that easy. Now, if you happen to be an Animas user right now, again, much respect that you love your insulin pump and it has now gone away and you were sad. I understand that. But if you want to give the Omnipod a try in the wake of this disaster of Animas going out of business, them abandoning you, you're in luck because Omnipod has a welcome program for Animas users. They're offering you a free PDM and a free box of pods. Now, I have a link in the show notes you can go to. It says Animas Welcome Program. Just click on that and you get going. Or you can call 1-888-6-GET-POD. And when you get on the phone, just say to them, hey, I was listening to the Juicebox Podcast and I heard you guys have a welcome program for me. I have been abandoned by Animas. Now here's an extra bonus, something that Dexcom and Omnipod just announced the other day. If Animas users take advantage of the Omnipod Welcome Program, they also have the opportunity to fill out a patient survey for Dexcom, which will give them a $200 gift card that they can put towards a new G5 Dexcom. That's pretty cool. I'm going to put a link to that press release in the show notes too, so you can see the actual details of it. But that's great. So you can try out an Omnipod if you're just thinking about it. If you're an Animas user and you want to switch, you can switch, get free stuff, and more free stuff. Free. Free's the best. myomnipod.com/juicebox, or all the links in your show notes. You leave with injections and, a meter and you're on your way. Did you feel prepared leaving the hospital? Or because it's a weird time, right? Like you're sort of like, because you're still 24. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but at 20, you're like a pseudo adult and
yeah.
Right. And so you're still looking for your parents for things like that. Had they abandoned you yet? Or were they still in Ohio when this happened?
They had abandoned me.
So you had already been abandoned by your family. And
exactly.
Did someone come up to help you, or did you just like...
So I was diagnosed when I was down visiting them. I noticed one day when my mom and I went shopping that I couldn't read any of the signs on the interstate. And I was like, my prescription, because I've always had bad eyes, but I'm like, my prescription never changes this fast. And I was like, that's weird. I don't know, but somehow my mom and I got to talking about the weird things that have been happening to me. And I have no idea what caused me to say this, but I just go, are these the symptoms of diabetes? Because my paternal grandpa had T1 and one of my cousins has T1. And so as soon as I said that, I saw it on her face, she knew. And we did a home A1C test and then immediately went to the ER because it was 9.6.
Wow.
And they didn't even admit me. They wanted to, but I had a plane to catch the next day to go back home. And I was like, I don't want this to disrupt my life. I just want to go right back into my routine and just make this fit and not have to I don't know. I felt like if I took a bunch of time off or if I just stayed in Alabama for a little longer, that I would just never bounce back. So I was so hell-bent on getting home.
Did you feel like you might sort of revert into a younger person and just stay with your parents?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're like, okay, fine. We'll release you, but you need to come back here tomorrow before you go to the airport. And then we need to confirm with a doctor in Ohio that you're going to see them as soon as you get home. And I was like, okay. But then I was in a small town in Ohio, and it was just a primary care physician that I got into seeing because the endos that I had been recommended to see had a 3-month-long waiting period before you could get an appointment. So I always joke that Google was pretty much my doctor the first year that I was diagnosed because it took a while to find a good endo. It took a while to get into an endo. And then the doctor that I saw in the beginning just didn't really know what she was doing as far as knowing the difference between T1 and T2. And so that was always frustrating. It was just crazy. Seriously? A lot of it was my fault though. So
okay. How was it your fault?
I should have just stayed in the hospital.
Initially in Alabama?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's a fault situation, but when you get home and you find a bunch of people who don't know what they're talking about, but they've got white coats and stethoscopes and things like that, it's hard to say it's your fault, so.
Right.
So I wouldn't think that. And all of a sudden, by the way, Audra, let's take a moment while we bolus for Arden for lunch. So.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah. So it's 11:18. She's asking me if I can pick somebody up and take them to a party tonight. Now she's telling me her blood sugar is... Oh, it's lower than I want it to be. Are you in gym or art? You would think I'd know these things, but my brain doesn't really work that way. So, believe it or not, where she's at is she's in gym. Okay. So, bolus, here we go. Her blood sugar's 70. She tested. By the way, her CGM said 71 for all those people who are like, is yours accurate? Bolus. Okay. Let's think about this for a second. There's cookies and chips and a sandwich, yogurt, broccoli, graham crackers. What else did I stuff in there? All right. I'm going to go with 9 units. And then I'm going to say this. Now, I can't give her 9 units when she's 70, 10 minutes before she's going to eat. So bolus 9 units, extend. Then let's do, all right, let's go nuts here. Ready? You watching this? 10% now. And the rest over a half hour.
That's awesome.
Right? So that way, most of the insulin should start kicking. And then you got to go say, eat right away. No messing around. Getting to food. Then I say, okay, with a question mark, which indicates I want an answer. But will she answer me? Probably not.
Unlikely.
Which is why we have read receipts on in the text. So I can at least say, oh, she said K. I got the whole capital K. Watch for dizzy. There we go. She wouldn't feel dizzy till about 58, which there's no way she's going to get to. Okay, so, Audra, sorry about that. But
no, you're fine.
Now let me go through this again. Get to home. You think, oh my God, everybody thinks I have type 2, type 1. They don't know the difference. They can't help me. I'm completely lost. At what point did you find a doctor who was like, I understand diabetes? Or did you just figure it out on your own and say, I really just need you people for the A1C? How did it go?
I pretty much just figured it out on my own, at least the first year. And then I would say it was about a year to my diagnosis that I found a really good endo.
Okay.
And that made such a big difference.
Sure. So when you get this great endo, did you come in sort of a fully realized person with diabetes, or did you come in with a ton of questions for them?
I didn't have too many questions. The only questions I really had were about like how insulin impacts weight gain and stuff, because I was like, I'm a half marathon runner. I eat really healthily. I'm super active, but somehow I still like put on weight when I started on insulin, and that really bothered me. And so I was like, help me. I'm doing everything right and it's not working.
Did that work out for you? Did you figure that out?
For the most part, yeah.
And what was the answer?
Pretty much that insulin's like a growth hormone, and you know, I lost a lot of weight before I was diagnosed, so of course I'm going to gain some of that back because that was like unhealthy loss.
Okay.
But that I'm healthy, I'm doing everything right, and that's all that should matter. And so I try not to be preoccupied with that or like with like a certain number when I know like, okay, I'm active, I eat well, I'm healthy, like that's all that should matter, and I shouldn't focus so much on that.
Yeah, I think so too. In the episode that will probably air before yours, I talked to a ballerina, like a legit dancer, and she said she had gotten so like super skinny at the lead up to her diagnosis, and all of her friends were just like jealous of how thin she was. And, you know what I mean? Like, so she saw it as like a good thing, you know?
Yeah.
And it is, you can really get like hung up on, you know, a number or the idea that, oh, I look so thin in this picture, and, you know, that's what I'm shooting for. But if you really look back, were you too thin?
I don't think too thin. Too thin for my frame, probably.
For your frame. Okay. For your frame.
And it's
Are
so
you 9
crazy
feet tall?
because that year, no. That year I was doing like wedding dress fittings every couple months and stuff too. So it was like super stressful every time I'd go, because it'd be like, you lost a lot of weight. Now it's too big. And then once I started on insulin, it's like, okay, you're filling this out more. What should we do in this situation? Like, it was just, I'm like, I swear I'm not like a yo-yo dieter. It's just a crazy year.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a strange year of your life. I mean, that's all. There's a lot going on. And you're good with that. Now, can I ask you, if you're comfortable saying, I'm always interested, and you're younger, so I don't feel as weird asking you for some reason, and you're not the parent of a kid, right? So when people are like, everything's going great now, what does everything's going great now mean? Like, how do you measure everything's going great now?
Well, I guess for me, when I say that, it's kind of more about knowledge, like in knowing how to be able to troubleshoot when things go awry. Like, I feel like I know my body now better than I did before, and I know how to be able to fine tune things. Yeah. So I guess for me, it means like having the knowledge to be able to put out fires.
Kind of roll with it. Yeah, and see, because I think that some people sort of mistakenly believe that when somebody's like, it's going great, and it really is going great for them, that what they think is their blood sugar must be 98 24 hours a day. It doesn't go up, it doesn't go down. Like they figured some magic thing out about diabetes, which I don't really believe exists. And so we can have, I've seen Arden have great days that turn into great weeks, and there's a blip here and there, but then as always. The great thing about the podcast is something always happened yesterday to talk about with diabetes. There's never a lack of something to talk about. And yesterday was one of those days. Like, she had a really good day. Her blood sugar was about where I wanted it all day long. It was a little high, 140 in the afternoon at school. And I got it to drift down to when she got home. It was perfect. And she gets home. She starts working on homework. She's got to go to softball practice at 6. So she's home at 3. About 3:30, she says... she says to me, I'd like to have an unnatural amount of nachos and cheese. And I was like, okay. So she gets out these nachos and makes this big pile on her plate. And I'm like, I'm not counting those. That looks like 8 units. And, and she just starts eating them and she gets all done. She's like, can I have a little more? And I was like, you need more? She goes, I still have cheese left. And I was like, well, that makes sense. And so, so she gets a little more and I give her some more insulin and I balled that insulin too. And we go into her softball practice. It's an indoor practice, so it's not a ton of running around. Her blood sugar is like 101. And I'm just like, I'm on top of the world. I'm like, this is going so well. And so then I get sort of like crazy. And I text my wife and I said, hey, because my son had baseball practice, she had softball practice, and everybody was sort of gone at dinner time. And I said to my wife, I was like, could you have Chinese takeout at the house at 7:15 when everybody gets home? And she's like, okay, sure. So we get home and now Arden's having sweet and sour chicken and white rice and edamame, and I throw I think 10 units onto her. I doubled her basal for like an hour and a half. I gave her 10 units. I was like, this is going to be great. And it was, Audra, it was. I was winning. If there's winning, I was winning. Because at like 9:30, while she was doing her homework, her blood sugar was just like 85 and just sitting there. And I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest day. And about 15 minutes later, I said, hey, your blood sugar's 73. You're drifting low. Great time for a snack if you want a snack. And she grabs these 2 cookies. And I even felt good about it. I was like, look at her. She gets to like wail on a couple of cookies before bed, like every other 12-year-old kid. It's going to be a perfect little leveling of her blood sugar. And then like 20 minutes later, she didn't move. And I was like, that's weird. And then another 10 minutes, it didn't move. And then I was like, uh-oh. So like I cut her basal off for a half hour because if the 2 cookies didn't move her, I was like, that's bad news. And then all of a sudden, instead of going up, she starts going down. And now it's 65. And I was like, oh, okay. So, with the cookies in there, I'll just keep the basal cut off for an hour, and this is going to come back. And then sure enough, it didn't. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, here's some juice. Like, have like just a third of a juice, because now your basal's been off for an hour. This'll do it. She's, 6-7 carbs of juice, nothing. Sat. And I could keep telling you the story in like increments, but instead, here's the end of it. 4:20 in the morning. My face was vibrating. It felt like someone had sandblasted my eyeballs and I wanted to jump off of a cliff. And I had, in those hours, given Arden 2.5 juice boxes, a half a banana. She didn't have insulin for 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Couldn't get her blood sugar to move off of 58.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And every time I started thinking like, I've got to get her basal back on because this is going to turn and go the wrong way on me any second. Anytime I would let the basal even come back on for 10 minutes, she'd drift down. Around 4:20 in the morning, she was 71 diagonal up. And I was like, okay, this is going to be it. I'm going to go sleep now. And I did. And then my wife woke me up at 7:30. And I was like, why did you do that? And so I'm still,
so mean.
My face still hurts. Like, I think that's where the Blurry Face song comes from, because I was vibrating. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just, it was insane. Now, that won't happen again for months. And you might say, oh, well, there was the Chinese or all the food, but we do that all the time. Like, like it was just this one diabetes day that was just started out great and went bonkers. You know what I mean? And so I get afraid that when people listen that they think that stuff like that doesn't happen, but there you go. You know.
It totally does.
Right.
I had a day like that recently where like the whole day, everything was great. I was like sitting at 100 like all day long. And then all of a sudden in the afternoon, I dropped way down to like the 40s for no reason. And I literally chugged like half a gallon of orange juice and it like still wouldn't come up for hours.
For that
and I was
long.
like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like
out of nowhere, right?
Like, it's so, yes. I'm like, do I need to think about like giving myself glucagon to like
I know, you by yourself or
is
is Brian there or were you by yourself at that point?
I was by myself. Brian still is, he's been away the past few months in the military and he finally comes home in like 3 weeks from today.
Cool.
And I'm so ready.
So tell me something, what that, like explain that feeling a little bit. 40, you've drank enough orange juice to bring 900 people's blood sugars up. It doesn't move. What are you most worried about in that moment? I think peace of mind is something that many people living with type 1 diabetes and their loved ones struggle with. And that's why I'm really pleased today to do this ad from Dexcom. Because nothing gives you peace of mind like being able to see your blood sugar in real time. What direction it's moving in and how fast it's moving in that direction. This information is not just key to taking great care of yourself, but it's key in taking care of your safety too. Actually, Audra's going to tell a story later in this episode about emergency medical services. And anyway, you'll think back on this ad when you hear Audra's story. When you hear the words Tuscaloosa later, think back on this ad. All right, now let's talk about Dexcom. Here's what you're going to get with the Dexcom G5 continuous glucose monitor. This CGM is going to give you real-time rise and fall alerts. It's going to alarm if your blood sugar goes above or below anywhere you set. You say, hey, I want to know when I'm above 120. Tell me. I want to know when I'm below 80. Tell me, and it will. If your blood sugar begins to rise quickly or fall quickly, it can tell you that too. There's a receiver that comes with it, but you can just use it with your phone. It's compatible with Android and Apple. I can see Arden's blood sugar on my iPhone right this second. I've pushed one button, and Arden's blood sugar is 121. She's at school. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon. Imagine that. Imagine being able to see your blood sugar or a loved one's from anywhere in the world. I pre-bolus Arden's meals. So at lunch today, we were doing a pre-bolus 20 minutes before she was going to eat food, but her blood sugar was at 80. So I had to give her an extended bolus and stretch it out. I didn't get to give her as much upfront insulin as I wanted to. And it worked for a while. For about the first hour, I was really happy with her blood sugar. But then I thought, oh, look, it's going up. So we were able to bolus more because, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, the FDA has approved the Dexcom for what they call non-adjunctive, right, use. You don't need to test to treat. So Arden's in a class. I gave her a text. I said, hey, your blood sugar's going up. Here's how much more insulin you want. She gave herself the insulin, and now she's coming down. I don't want her to come down too quickly because she's about to get on the bus. So I see her. She was 121 a couple of minutes ago. Her blood sugar's drifting lower, just as I hoped. I looked over now at it again. It's 117. She's going to get on the bus in a couple of minutes, be home in about 10 minutes. Her blood sugar's probably going to be 90 when she gets here. Imagine how great that is. Now, listen, your results may differ, but this is how I use the Dexcom to make great health outcomes for Arden all the time. You could too. The safety aspect of it cannot be denied. The alarms telling you when you're leaving different blood sugar levels. It's amazing. But you can also use those alarms to make good decisions, to keep spikes away, to keep falls from being too drastic. It's amazing. I really hope you look into it. Dexcom.com/juicebox with a link in your show notes.
At that point, I was just kind of thinking, like, okay, what's my next step? Like, do I need emergency care at this point? Like, because I felt okay. I mean, I certainly felt low, but I didn't feel that low.
Right.
And I kept testing on my meter as well, just to make sure that I was calibrated right, and I was. So at that point, I was just kind of like, what's my next step? Because if this isn't coming up, like, I can't just let it do this all day.
Right.
But
I did the same thing last night. I tested Arden more last night between 11 and 4 in the morning than I did for the week before that, I felt like. And every time I thought, like, you know what, every time I did, I was like, oh, her blood sugar's higher, and the Dexcom just didn't catch up. It was always within a point. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. At one point, she was 48, 63, 55, then back to 58. Then I was like, oh, 63, it's coming. Nope, back to 55. And I was like, oh, please stop. And I just kept
exhausting.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Like when I woke up this morning, my wife's like, what are you doing today? And I was like, I am recording a podcast and taking a shower.
And sleeping.
Yeah, I think those are my two things. I might go to the grocery store if you're all really lucky. So it just really, it kicked my butt. Like it really did. So, okay. So you weren't scared like, oh my God, I'm going to die alone here. You just kind of kept working the problem. You're like, what do I do next? What's next?
Yeah, because I didn't really feel bad. If I had felt worse, then I'd probably be like,
You might have panicked you a little more.
Maybe I should, yeah.
Is there anybody watching your Dexcom remotely with the share feature?
Yes, I have 2 of my friends in town on it so that they can show up at my door if need be. Mm-hmm. And I have my mom and Brian's on it. And my neighbor.
Okay. Where is Brian right now, though?
He's actually in my state. He's just at the very bottom of it. So we're about 4 hours apart.
Okay. So his military service has him in the country right now.
Yeah. Okay. He's doing some job training right now. So,
okay.
Yeah. He's not deployed.
Have you ever had somebody, like one of your friends, come, like, be like, hey, what the heck? Or did they text you? And are you okay? Or how does that work when they...
I get phone calls through the night, like, all the time. Like, I'll wake up I usually don't wake up to the Dexcom alert sound because I can sleep through really anything.
Yeah, me too.
But they will, like, just call me over and over until they get me on the line pretty much to make sure that I'm awake and, like, treating.
Yeah, and that feels, like, it sounds great to me, but are you ever irritated by it, or do you like it?
Sometimes I'm irritated if they're like already texting me and it's the first alert that's gone off, just because I'm like, okay, I need to focus on treating first and then I'll text you.
And then they keep texting.
Yeah, and I'm like, guys, if it goes off one time, just know I'm on it. So if you don't see arrows starting to move upwards, then maybe start reaching out. But
so you bring something up that I think is a major piece of how I learned to help Arden remotely with her blood sugar, right? Which is the concept of not flipping out. Like, you have to be able to parse the time in your head correctly. Like, I texted her and I said, hey, your blood sugar is low, right? Now she's like, okay. And she's doing something about it. Now, 3 minutes later, her blood sugar is not going to be any higher or any lower probably. And, but I'm sitting there, you're in this vacuum at that point. Like, you're looking at the number, you're in this vacuum, you have this helpless feeling because you can't be with them in case something gets sideways. And it speeds up your timeline on your side, not on their side. And you have to be able to, like, I think a big leap I made was to be able to slow down and just keep kind of imagining what she's doing in that moment, and trusting it a little bit based on tons of historical data between our interactions, but still, like, go, okay, here's what's happening now. She's going through her bag. She's got her juice. She's starting to drink it. Some girl's talking to her. She stops it halfway through. Now she's drinking the rest. It's still going to take 2 revolutions of the CGM before I can even tell what's going on, really.
Right, because it takes like 15 minutes for your blood sugar to really respond to the carbs.
It very well could.
Yeah, Dexcom only reads every like 5 minutes.
Right,
so.
Right. And so there's that gap in there where you just have to sort of, now don't get me wrong, if she was 40 and she was 2 arrows down, I wouldn't be like, let me just wait and see how this goes.
Right.
Like drive across town like a lunatic or something like that to the school. But if you kind of stay ahead of it enough, that you don't get to those points very often. So
yeah.
Like now, such a great example. So her blood sugar leveled out at 70, which is fantastic. And I know I can trust the timing that she's in the cafeteria and eating now. But in the course of walking through the building, she hit a bad spot for the Wi-Fi.
Oh gosh.
So I lost her blood sugar right now. She was 70 and I can't see it anymore. Now, I think most people might be like, well, he just gave her a bunch of insulin. Her blood sugar is 70. He doesn't really know if she's you know what? I got to assume that everything's going the way I think it's going to go. If there was a fire and she got drug out on the the parking lot right now and she's standing out in the freezing cold and not eating, that would be pretty out of character for how things normally go. And would she be in trouble? Probably, but I have to assume she'd be smart enough to drink a juice, go find somebody and say, hey, look, I just took a bunch of insulin for food I'm not eating.
Right.
You kind of have to trust it a little bit. Anyway, that's a really long way of saying that when people are like, how do you get your A1C like that? And, for Arden, and I don't know if you know, but Arden's been between 5'7" and 6'2" for like 3.5 years.
That's so awesome.
Right. But thank you. But the way you do that is I break the day up into quadrants. Like there's overnight, there's at school, and there's at home. And if you can't just give away one of those 8-hour periods to, oh, well, she's at school, there's nothing we can do about it, or she's sleeping and I want to keep her blood sugar high because I'm scared. If you do that you're never going to get down to that number. Right. So,
right.
So being able to manage back and forth through text messages while she's at school is such a huge part of it. And I'm realizing now as I'm talking, a big part of that is trusting that what is going to happen is going to happen, which is a leap to make. And her blood sugar is
and
back,
trusting her that she knows what to do and that you've,
yeah, right,
gone through this with her before, so she knows, like, based off of what has happened in the past or just knowledge that you've given her, like, okay,
yep.
If there is a fire drill, I know that I need to grab a juice and this banana and
whatever's going to be.
Yeah.
And her blood sugar is back now. It is 73. So
awesome.
Look where we're at right now. She's 10, 20 minutes into that bolus, which means that most of those 9 units are into her, but only some of them are active. And now she's starting to eat at a blood sugar of 73 with insulin that's starting to become active. It's such a perfect, that's the timing. I don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know how you feel, but I repeat myself a lot, but it's necessary. I think that if your blood sugar is high, you probably have not enough insulin, or you've mistimed the insulin, or a combination of those two things. And the same if it's low. If your blood sugar is low, you've likely used too much insulin, mistimed the insulin, or a combination of those two things. So that what in the course of our conversation today, people got to hear how I bolused even with a lower blood sugar, and we're keeping it from spiking. So
I know you're so brave.
No,
I wish I could say I do it like that every time.
So what stops you when you don't?
I think right now it's mainly just with me living alone for the first time ever really and adjusting to this. It's I'm always afraid about, I don't know, I always fear the worst. And so I'm trying to avoid that.
So has something happened that put that fear into you, or is it just living the last 4 years with diabetes that gave you the fear?
I've just been having a lot of weird lows lately that seem kind of unexplained. And let's see, maybe it was 2 months ago now. Time is going by way faster than I thought.
Yeah, that happens as you get older too.
Oh gosh. But I was sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear this loud banging on my door and yelling, and I'm like, oh great, I'm gonna die. And then I focus a little bit more in here.
Home invasion is the first thing you thought, Audra?
Yeah. I'm ready. I'm prepared. But I hear what they're saying, and they're saying, Tuscaloosa EMS. And I'm like, oh, I must be low. Okay. And I sit up to get out of bed and go open the door. And as soon as I sit up, I'm so spinny headed. I'm like, okay, that's why they're here.
Yeah.
And I look at my Dexcom, and I was and I'd been in the 30s and 40s for an hour in my sleep, totally not waking up to any alerts or phone calls from anybody. And so anyways, I opened the door, and they're like, hi, your mom called us. We hear that you may need some help. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm sorry.
Maybe I do.
And they're like, no, it's fine. We're glad that we're here. And I'm like, I'll be fine after I have this juice and whatever. And they're like, okay, but we're going to stay for a few minutes at least and make sure that that's true.
We're here already. So this has been happening. Right. This has been happening more frequently recently.
Yeah. I'm not really sure why I've been having so many lows. My endo and I've been working things out and trying to stabilize, and it's been getting better, but you caught me on a bad day today. I was up like almost all night with lows last night, so I'm like,
you and I are in the same boat. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
We are captains of the struggle bus today.
Maybe the episode is going to be called Low Your Boat. It's possible. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with any of this, Audra. So, okay,
You're so creative.
No, I'm not. I'm listening to what you say, and then I'm just highlighting it. I'm doing nothing. The secret is I'm doing nothing. Oh, wow. Okay. So you said you just got a Dexcom recently. Has that part of how you're figuring out about the lows? Like, do you think you were having lows before that you weren't aware of?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure of it.
And so the data's coming back and you're trying to make sense of the data at this point?
Yeah, pretty much.
What are you seeing?
I'm noticing lots of overnight lows. Mm-hmm. That's mainly the concern now. Overnight and then like mid-afternoon lows. And so now that I'm like seeing that pattern, I know what to expect throughout the day and the night. So I know, okay, even if I'm going to bed and my blood sugar's stable, like it wouldn't hurt me to have a snack before I go to sleep, since I know that I'm like prone to that. So without my Dexcom, like I wouldn't have any of that knowledge of my patterns to be able to tweak things. And
well, are you tweaking basal rates and things like that?
Yeah.
Now, do you do that on your own or do you wait for the endo?
I try to wait for the endo, but if I notice something that's happening on a consistent basis that I'm like, okay, all I really need to do is adjust this, and I'm sure I'll see some positive change, then I'll do it myself. Yeah. But my endo usually like will trust me, on that kind of thing. But I have a patient portal that I can communicate with her via like message really easily, kind of like just email her and be like, what do you think of this? And she'll respond and be like, that's a great idea. Let's try that, and keep me posted. So it's super easy to be able to like communicate with her like on a
Do you feel like you need to talk it over with her before you do it? Or like, because I mean, you're telling me that you're consistently low overnight. What I think is you should try, just even attempt basal decrease for one night to see how that works for you. You know what I mean? Especially the afternoon lows, because you can you're awake for that even. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so,
yeah.
And then if that works, then yay. I think basal rates are much more powerful than people give them credit for.
Yeah.
And so we always think about, I think our minds jump to, well, did I bolus too much, or was this food not, did I not count the carbs the way I should have? But I think when you can recognize that your basals can push you around too, even in moments when you think they're so stable though, from, my blood sugar sits nice and stably, my basal rates must be fine. But, consistently at a certain time of day, something happening to me sounds like change your basal rate a little bit, for at least the hour or maybe longer as the lead up to when it starts to get low. But that's the great thing about the CGM, is that you can see that now, and it starts
those
making
patterns,
more sense to you. Yeah.
It's so funny you're talking about the basal rate, and I am sitting here realizing that I just forget about it a lot of the time.
It's not just a big part in this regard, but for food too. I wonder how much people think about the idea that, I'm sitting right here now I don't have type 1 diabetes. I haven't really had a piece of toast like 2 hours ago. There's pretty much no food in my system, and my body is regulating my blood sugar with a basal insulin of its own. But if I were to go have, I don't know, something light to eat after you and I get done speaking, my basal rate might not change. But if I got nuts and ate 3 slices of pizza after you and I start eating, my body's going to just be like, whoa, more insulin, right? Like, we need more insulin. And it's hard to think about, because with a healthy pancreas, it happens so instantaneously, because we make way better insulin than pharma companies make. I mean, we as people with pancreases make way better insulin than pharma companies. It's more reactive and works quicker and etc. And so, but still my body is giving me more insulin, and if I were to suck on a piece of like candy with sugar in it for 10 hours straight, then my body would titrate towards that. You know what I mean? Like, and we have to think that way with our pumps too.
Right.
And you can't always be making these like go into my settings firm adjustments. At 1 o'clock, I want it to be 0.5, but now I'm going to make it 0.9, or, it's going to be 3 units instead of 1 unit, or whatever your basal is. I think you have to be able to say to yourself, I'm having Chinese food. That's probably going to need more insulin. And you know what I mean? And just give more. And that's how I handle pizza and pancakes and all that kind of stuff like that. I see a meal like that coming. I sometimes double Arden's basal rate blindly for an hour and a half for a meal like that. And with no real, like, I'm not sitting around with the math going, now, let me think if I'm just like, hey, more insulin. And, because you're about to go, hey, more food. So why not? Right?
Right.
You get into a fair fight at least. Give yourself a chance, right? So,
right.
Yeah, you definitely, I mean, like, especially, a great place to practice with that idea is if you hit a stubborn high blood sugar and you say your blood sugar goes to 300 and you think this is going to take 5 units to get me back. Like I would take like a unit of that, 2 units of that, and double my basal and then give myself a bolus. I would combine an increased temp basal with a bolus to try to do that, because it actually ends up being more effective than just a bolus a lot of times for reasons that I don't completely understand. And Audra, let's just do something right here. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician. This is just a podcast. I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. You should never listen to me. And these are just my experiences. So, 4 years, huh? Does it feel like a long time?
In some ways it feels like forever, and in other ways I'm like, I still feel like there's so much to learn.
Well, yeah, I think there definitely is.
I mean, I'm glad that I spent my childhood like carefree and not having to deal with all this. But like my cousin was diagnosed when she was, I think, 6. So she knows no other way. And I'm like, that must be nice,
Isn't that funny?
Because I do know another way. I'm like, I wish I could just go back to that way some days. But I don't know. There's positives and negatives to both, I think.
Yeah, because you have something to miss.
I am glad that I got to be carefree as a kid.
Sure, absolutely. But you have something to miss. You recollect what it means not to have diabetes.
Yeah, like I know what it's like to be able to just go out and go for a run whenever I want and not have to carb up, but not too much, and like, I don't know, negotiate all that stuff. Yeah, and I'm an adventurer. I love to always be like out doing things, and adjusting now to having to carry a bunch of stuff with me all the time is annoying. But necessary.
Yeah, I recognize that. Like even this morning, I realized last night I used, the first time I gave Arden juice, I took it out of her purse, basically. She carries like a bag with her. And so this morning I said, hey, do you have, she came downstairs and I was like, you have to make sure to put a juice box back in your bag. And she goes, yeah, I did. Oh no, she goes, I have one. So she didn't say I did. She said, I have one. And so I thought, well, no, maybe she just remembers that there was one there when she went to bed last night. Right. So I'm like, no, I used that one. And she looked at me like, she turned and she didn't really say anything, but the look on her face was, listen to me, you idiot. I put a juice box in this damn bag, and if you ask me about it again, I'm going to come over there and shove my lance in your, like she really looked at me like, please don't bother me about this damn thing. And so I was just like, hey, like I was just double checking because I used it and I wanted to make sure you weren't thinking of a time before I took it out. And then she kind of like looked at me like, all right, that's an acceptable reason why you're bothering me.
I guess I'll let it go.
Right. And then we went out to the car and I took her to school. But I do watch her friends. They don't think about anything. They roll this way and they roll that way, and they don't know what's going on. They're not paying attention to anything. you could take one of them and lock them in a box for 2 days and still be alive if he came back later. I don't mean to, talk about children like there's something you can lock in a box, but you get my point. Like you could stick that kid in the closet, forget about her, and come back in like 3 days, and she'd be like, "Why did you lock me in the closet?" But she'd still be alive.
Yeah.
You lock my kid in the closet for 3 days, dead. And so, there is something to be considered there. Like you say, you're an adventure. Like, what if I go out and I get lost? What if I go out and I get stuck? What if I 128 hours my arm? Is that a reference? Did you see that movie? James Franco gets his arm caught in a boulder, has to cut it off with a penknife.
Oh, I heard about it. I didn't see it, but I heard about it.
But I just threw in 128 hours like it was just like something common. Like I was saying Forrest Gump. Like everybody's like, "Oh, I've seen that movie," but it isn't like that. So tell me something. Your like dialect, is it Ohio, Alabama? Is that like what I'm getting? Because I hear a little bit of both sometimes.
So I don't know. My whole family, like we all have Southern roots, so I've always kind of had like a little bit of a twang. But I definitely see how living down here has brought that out.
It's been
a lot more.
Has it? Yeah.
Like I'll talk to my Ohio friends, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, you have such an accent." And I'm like, really? Because everyone down here says I sound like a Yankee. So
it's fun. My brother lives in Wisconsin after living in Philadelphia for most of his life, and we'll talk on the phone, and I'm like, "What are you like? Are you in Canada right now? Like what are you?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "You're just like stretching words out all over the place." And he said, "No, I'm not." And then I, of course, don't hear it in me, and I get notes all the time. A lot of people out west, like, "Yo, what's up?" Like, so many people listen in California. How are you guys? Thank you for listening. But a lot of them that are from the East Coast originally say things like, "Oh, the podcast is great because you sound like the people I grew up around." And then I'm like, "No, I don't sound like anything." And they're like, no, you do. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So
I know it's so funny how we kind of like
don't hear
adapt what we are around. Like I don't know, it's funny. But yeah, I definitely don't hear it on myself.
So listen, let's ask this. You're 24. I'm not your dad, but you're too young to have a baby. But let's say this. Is Brian going to come home, and are you guys thinking about kids?
We are. We've actually been trying for a little while, and it's a little more difficult for us than it would be for someone without T1, is basically the impression I'm getting from my medical team. But it shouldn't be too long until that happens for us.
At first you were like, "It's a little more difficult for us." I'm like, "I wonder if she doesn't know how to do it, maybe." But you meant the diabetes. It's so difficult for us. He goes in the living room, and I, just like my mom told me, I go upstairs, and then we text each other and tell each other we love each other, and I'm not pregnant for some reason. And but no. So are you having trouble keeping your A1C? Like, this is the part I never really got to. Like, is your A1C where you want it to be, or are you?
Pretty much. It's at 6.4, and it's been there the last few times. I've gone through, or I've kind of oscillated between like 6.4 and 6.6 consistently for the past 18 months, which I would love to see it in the 5s. That's my goal someday, is like seeing like a 5.8 would be awesome.
Well, that's what they're looking for a pregnancy, right? Like lower like that.
In the 5s, yeah. Which my endo says if I got pregnant now, it'd be fine. But she's like, "Let's just see if we can get down to like 5.5. I'm like, "All right."
Okay. Yeah, you're like,
at the rate, with all these lows I've been having at that rate.
So are you getting that number like with too many, like, because we never talk about this. Now I have to do like a whole like miniature like show about this, like, to make sure people understand completely. You can't run around with your blood sugar 50 for 6 hours a day and then have it be 250 for 6 hours a day and go, "Hey, my A1C is 7. I'm doing great," because you're not doing great. And you can't have that kind of variability. You can't achieve a good average by having these crazy lows. That is not healthy for you. And so, but again, not to say that people don't get low. Arden obviously was low last night for 3 or 4 hours. It's not her norm. But where Arden picks up, I think A1C bonus points, if I could put it somewhere that way, is like, right now, like, she's eating and her blood sugar's, it's lower, it's 65, and it's gonna come back up probably in the next couple of minutes, but she lived for the last half hour around 65 or 70. So, later if her blood sugar does go to 140 for some reason, her average still ends up being around, 100 for that time frame, and, blah, blah, blah. And that's where I got to get like an actual like medical person on to talk about it so that they can say things that aren't ridiculous.
Whatever.
Like I do. Say things that aren't exactly fully fleshed out thoughts, but yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot. Like you want to have a baby, you have to get, the doctors are going to, you're going to need to get your A1C down for that. And at the same time, that's sort of not how baby making works exactly, right? Like you could have a baby by mistake at any A1C. So,
right.
And not be what you're, so, okay. So you're looking for a kid. Do we hope it's a boy or a girl? Go ahead and tell me now.
Oh gosh, I do not want any girls. Oh. I can't have a little version of myself.
All right. So we're coming up on an hour, but why do we not want a little version of Audra in the house?
I mean, it would be fine.
No. What is it about yourself you wouldn't want to see mimicked back at you?
Oh, the sass. I don't think I could handle the sass.
Do you think you'd get into some sort of like
also, girls are expensive. Like, yeah. Oh my goodness. Especially down here, like, there's all these dresses you have to get for all these events and stuff. Yeah.
Well, listen, 1 or 2 baseball bats and you'll be equal. So, gosh, what if you get a girl who plays baseball? And then
Brian's like, that you say that and we're going to have only girls because you said that, right? I'm like, oh, gosh.
so you get these, like, so there's, like, I don't know, like, I'm going to say something silly, like cotillions or things like that. Like, did I use a correct word or no?
Yeah. I get what you mean.
You're being polite.
Well, there's lots of like pageants down here, and just like more like socials and like dances and like that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Because what I was going to say is that Arden plays sports and is girly, so I get hit on both.
Oh, really?
I get hit on both sides. There's I need a baseball glove. And I need leggings, and I need this, and I need that. I'm like, oh, jeez. And I'm going to get my nails done with Mom. And I'm like, you're both going? Like, why do you both need to go? Can't one of you paint the other one's nails? I don't understand exactly. Why are we paying for this? And my son's like, I need a glove, I need this, I need that. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. Kids are really expensive.
So much stuff.
They're very, very, very expensive. And my son's looking at colleges right now. And every one that he talks about, I was like, oh, how much is it exactly?
Like you only see dollar signs when he starts talking about it.
Yeah, it's terrible. And trust me, it's all right. I think we figured it out. You guys should get like a dog maybe instead.
Oh yeah, we have a dog.
Oh my God.
He's 8 months old and crazy, but I love him so much.
He's 8 months old.
I'm self-training him to be a diabetic alert dog. And so right now we're in the very beginning stages of that, just kind of like making sure that his obedience training is solidified before we move on to the other stuff. But yeah, he's my companion when Brian's gone.
That's cool. Well, you should at least teach him how to bring you like juice. That would be a good first.
He does when he sleeps in the bed with me and I have lows. He does do pretty good about waking me up.
No kidding.
If I'm not waking up, so that's really cool to see.
That's excellent, really.
But I actually started my own podcast. Like, I'm on episode 2. Came out yesterday.
What made you do that?
But I'm going to talk about him on there. I don't know. I've always wanted to do one, and I feel like I have a lot to say, but no, like, space to say it, really. And so I tried, like, vlogging in the past on YouTube, and that was not my thing because I just didn't like having to, like, I don't know, make myself look presentable and then get on. I don't know.
You should see me right now. I have been wearing this sweatshirt for 3 days. Yeah. My hair is going in 16 different directions. So, that's cool. Well, good luck with that. That's amazing. I'll throw a link in for everybody and so they can check it out. And so you're right at the very beginning?
I am. I have lots to learn, but so far it's been fun.
Yeah, that's cool. And so did you have a blog before?
I did.
Do you do that still?
I do. I don't do it regularly. I just kind of do it like when I'm thinking about something I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get on a schedule where I would every other week I'll post something, and that just doesn't work when I'm working full time.
I have this thing called my job, and it takes up a lot of my time.
And that doesn't.
I always say that if you like my blog or this podcast or anything like that, the real person you want to thank is my wife, because I'm a stay-at-home parent. So there's time I can find in the days to do stuff like this where, if I was working full time, I wouldn't be able to do that. She's the founder of the feast. If truth be told, she's the one bringing you the big goose at the end of the the book. So yeah, there you go. All right. Well, listen, when we're done talking here, I'll get off and we'll talk a little bit about that. And if you have a couple minutes, I'll see if I can say anything valuable for you. But probably I don't really know what the hell I'm doing. So. I don't know how well it's going to go. I'll start talking to you like, this guy knows nothing about this.
Oh, no.
Well,
I know the very bare minimum, so.
Yeah. Well, good luck. I hope it takes off and that, you find an audience and it helps a bunch of people. And let me just say this, people, you should go check out Audra's podcast, but please, for the love of God, don't stop listening to mine. And,
oh, yes.
And if you have to choose between one of them, choose mine, even if hers is better. I want mine chosen. I just want to be very clear about that right now.
Hopefully they can listen to them in tandem. Mine's called the Type 1 Diabetic Podcast.
Okay.
And so
well,
hopefully they'll complement each other.
You're thoughtful. You're thoughtful when you say in tandem. I have more of a an aggressive sort of I want to win, I guess is what I'm saying. So I want people to be helped. So this is here's the confusion for me. I just want people to live better with diabetes, but I also am very competitive, and so I want you to fail miserably, Audra. And at the same time, I don't want you to fail. I want you to have great success that helps a bunch of people. But couldn't they just be helped by me? I mean, that's really what we're saying here. Is I probably need a psychiatrist, I think, is what we're getting at.
No,
you don't think so? You don't. Do you not have that feeling? Like, do you like to win when you're doing things, like taking the diabetes out of it for a second?
I do. Yeah. I do like to win.
Well, then I'm cutting out the part about your podcast. You're going to try to kick my butt. I see what's going on here. All right.
Yeah, you better watch out, Scott.
I am worried, honestly, now, because you've got this sort of like Ohio.
I'm sure I only have like 2 listeners. So.
I have 2 listeners.
I probably don't even have any subscribers.
Are you listening?
No.
Okay, well then there you go.
Not after I post it.
Good for you.
I'm like, oh, I'm so done listening to this clip over and over and over.
One time I listened back to make sure something sounded okay through a certain kind of headphones, and my son goes, "Are you listening to your own podcast?" And I went, "No, not for that reason." He goes, "Oh man, that's bad." And I was like, "No, not like that." And he walked away from me. I never got to explain myself. It's very embarrassing.
Oh my gosh.
Well, listen, I think this was very conversational. I enjoyed this a lot. But I think what we learned, people from the North learned and out West learned today more than anything else, that Tuscaloosa is actually a place, and it's not just something we hear on television shows to sound funny. So, because you said the EMS was from there. And say the name of the town one more time.
Tuscaloosa.
Look at you. I couldn't even do that. See, I for certain just thought that was something that television writers made up so that I would be like, oh, the South.
No, it's legit.
I'm just kidding.
Home of the Crimson Tide.
I know.
Roll Tide.
Oh my God, you guys are overwhelmed with the football down there, right?
Oh gosh, yes. And I work for the university, so it's madness.
It happens on all sides.
I love it.
What do you do there?
I work in the College of Human Environmental Sciences for like the preschool program on campus.
Oh, very nice.
And so I'm the intern coordinator for the program, and I just kind of do whatever needs to be done.
Yeah, that sounds
I wear many hats.
Yeah,
but I'm never bored, so.
Excellent. All right, listen, we're way over time. Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Huge thank you to Audra for coming on the show, for sharing her story. That was pretty great. Thank you, Dexcom and Omnipod, for sponsoring. You can go to myomnipod.com/juicebox or dexcom.com/juicebox. Don't forget about the Welcome Program for Animas users. There are links in your show notes about that. What else should we be talking about? Oh, I had promised that this was going to be an episode with a different person, but I had audio problems with that file, so it's going to take me a little time to fix it. That was from like 2 weeks ago, if you actually remember that. You guys have been leaving a lot of great ratings and reviews on iTunes for the podcast lately. Thank you very, very much. T-shirts are being delivered today to the house. Bold with Insulin shirts will be available very soon online. I'll have details for that for you really soon. That's it, I guess. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend. That is the most important thing you can do. If you love the Juicebox Podcast, of course, leave a rating and a review at iTunes. We love that. But tell a friend. Share the podcast with somebody else. That I really appreciate. One last thing. I looked around to try to give you a link to Audra's podcast, but I don't know that she ever got it off the ground. If she did, I'll check back in future episodes and let you know. But for now, I don't have a link to anything. I'm sorry. All right, this has been a really long episode. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.